In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
This Money Tales episode is all about how the messages we learn in our youth and the experiences we have with money as we're growing up shape and orient our relationship to money. Our guest this week is Sue Bevan Baggott. Growing up with home haircuts and hand-sewn clothes, Sue learned early the value of frugality. But it was her and her husband's decision to live on one salary while investing the other that laid the groundwork for Sue to transition from corporate executive to purpose-driven angel investor, working to close the gender gap in startup funding. Today, Sue is founder and president of Power Within Consulting. Her work is focused on empowering people to accelerate business success by delivering highly impactful, human-centered business and innovation strategies. Sue is also an accidental angel investor, startup advisor, and board member.
Here are three key money topics Sue hits on in this conversation. First, her financial education began through conversations with college friends who opened her eyes to the world of investing. This early comfort with learning from peers laid the groundwork for something bigger, confidently leaning on mentors and sponsors to better understand the corporate compensation structure she participated in. Second, life threw Sue and her husband an exciting life and career curveball, an international assignment that would expand their financial savvy. Rather than navigate the maze of international taxes, foreign housing allowances, and currency considerations alone, they decided to work with a financial advisor. It was a choice that would transform their approach to money management. And third, Sue assumed she'd follow a well-worn path, earn, save, and donate to charity. Then she found herself drawn to a different kind of impact. She discovered angel investing, where she could actively fuel innovative startups, becoming part of their journey while potentially generating returns. A revelation that completely changed her perspective on how to create meaningful change in the world. Now it's our pleasure to bring you Sue Bevan Baggott's Money Tales.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager. Cami, I recently received an email from one of our former podcast guests that triggered an exchange among us. She was announcing to her network that she was going to stop using certain social media sites to advertise her business. She felt that those companies were no longer aligned with what was important to her. And so she wanted to inform her network that she was making this shift. I reached out to congratulate her because it was a good reminder that we all have power with the way we use our money. If we're working with vendors that we're not aligned with, one way to express our ideas, our values, our concerns is to stop doing business with them, which is what she was doing. She appreciated the message. She said she did get some blowback from some of her group.
Oh, interesting.
I just thought that was wonderful. And I thought it was a good reminder to our listeners that not only do you have that control within your business, if you're working in business, but we also have that power with the way we spend our discretionary money and also with the way we invest and the way that we give to charities and other people. There's a lot of power. Sometimes we don't remember it. Sometimes we think, well, our spending is just a drop in the bucket. And maybe it is in a particular situation, but if all of us were more value aligned, it could make a big difference.
Absolutely. And I bet it felt great for her to make this decision. Probably scary also, because this is likely how she brands herself and markets herself. And so she's got to think differently, but kudos to that.
I was really excited when I received her initial email because she did recognize that the decision she was making would have a direct economic impact on her, because she said she does generate a lot of business from a particular platform. But again, her values were guiding her away from that platform, even though it would mean giving up some potential financial resources.
I bet our guest today has some thoughts on values. Yeah, Sue?
It's been so interesting hearing about that, because I think when you do align your money with your values, you do feel a lot better. And sometimes those choices are difficult to make. And sometimes we forget how many of our financial decisions have that kind of impact. That's certainly been part of my journey, is learning all of those different ways. But kudos to her for making those decisions. And maybe there'll be a short-term economic shift, but maybe the long-term, it'll be a more abundant decision for her, because she is aligned with her values and she'll attract people that are aligned with her values.
That's right.
Very good point.
It's my pleasure to formally welcome Sue Bevan Baggott to the Money Tales podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Sue, would you introduce yourself and share a couple pivotal moments that really influenced who you are today?
I grew up in a small suburb outside of Philadelphia, very modest house, small family. My parents demonstrated a lot of hard work ethic, but also from an early stage in giving back. We didn't have a lot of extra money. Most of our giving back was in form of volunteering and things, but I have a lot of memories about that. And my father's father, so my paternal grandfather, had a really strong influence on me early on as well. And I remember him talking to me about using our talents to the fullest in service of others. And that's something that guided me quite a bit in how I wanted to live. But when I was young, we really didn't have a lot of money. In fact, it was very tight in our house. So my mom did a whole bunch of things to try to be super frugal. So when I think about early money lessons, it was a lot about how do you be really careful with how you spend, and how do you save for the things that are important to you. It's also a little embarrassing, though, because one of the ways my mom saved money was by sewing some of our clothes, and also by giving us home haircuts. So I got teased a lot at school for my clown pants, because they're elastic waists and they didn't fit the way other kids' clothes did. And I had enough other things that was also getting teased about being kind of a nerdy kid and sensitive kid. So I remember one of my early money motivations was around having enough money to buy things that I wanted to fit in. The lessons of being frugal were very, very good, and they stuck with me for a very long time, as well as the giving back part. I also had some interesting moments as a child that I think were very pivotal for me. One, I overheard a conversation between my mom and my dad. I was about 4 years old. We just had the third child come into my family, so younger sister. There was myself. I was the oldest of three girls. My sister Sandy was then, and my sister Sherry had come home from the hospital. And my mom had a good friend who was visiting her, and I was supposed to be playing in the other room. But I was hanging around and curious about what was going on. And I overhear my mom say to her friend, "I am so sorry I couldn't give Bob the son he always wanted." So confusing to me, because I was super excited. I'm an older sister for the next time. And I thought having three girls in our family was the best thing ever. Why would he want a son? What's wrong with three daughters? And in particular, what's wrong with me? It was interesting because I set out from that point to prove to my dad that daughters could do anything sons could do. And he loved us, to be clear, but he had a lot of the societal norm at that time. His big thing was athletics. And he had been an athlete from a young age and all that. He did not see girls as athletes. And I was undersized. My other teasing moment was being a shrimp. And I was extremely nerdy. I loved reading books, and I was asthmatic. So I was definitely not a natural athlete.
What'd you do about this?
I was determined to show I could do anything boys could do. So I did start getting into athletics, but just took a long time. I started with things I could do that didn't require a lot of endurance, because with asthma, so I started with doing cheerleading. short bursts of energy and I was reasonably coordinated and I did gymnastics. But by the time I was in junior high school, I started doing lacrosse. And that was the challenge because I was the slowest person on the field by far. I had to go to practice early or stay practice late to do all the laps and everything. But over time, I gradually improved. When I went to college, I actually walked on to the lacrosse team. That was something that made me proud that I'd gone all the way from being like really bad to decent enough to play. But my dad never came to a single one of my games. I was frustrating because I was trying so hard to show him that I could be an athlete. And it was hard because he didn't come to any of the games. Now we've talked about it. He knows how I feel about it and he feels badly about it. But his father was the one, he was one a really major mentor. I talked about him telling me about using my talents to the fullest in service of others. So as I was growing up, when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do from a career standpoint, I loved science, I loved math. And so he encouraged me to become an engineer. And he told me engineers solve big problems and make the world a better place. And if you love science and you love math, then be an engineer. And that's what I ended up studying.
What important messages. Wow. So Sue, all these different messages, when did money start having meaning to you?
I think money first started having meaning to me when I felt like we were so tight on money that I was dressing in the clown pants and I really wanted to have a way to earn some money to buy clothing that I wanted to buy. And I had an opportunity to earn money when we were young, I was probably about 10 years old, when I discovered babysitting. There was a school event and my mom was going to this event and she had hired a babysitter and the babysitter never showed up. My mom forgot to pick up the babysitter and went to the event. And I was home with my two younger sisters. Now I was a very responsible kid, so it was fine. But she got back and realized what happened. She's like, okay, obviously you're old enough to take care of your sisters. Then she never needed to hire a babysitter anymore. That was great. Then one of our neighbors found out that I knew how to babysit. She needed a very affordable care provider. I had proven myself and she knew my parents were across the fence. So I started earning money when I was about 11. As soon as I started learning that I could work and make money, that was a huge thing to me because then I could start to buy some things I wanted. I started to save for things that I wanted. I remember really wanting a 10-speed bicycle because that would give us some freedom. And I became a very popular babysitter in the neighborhood.
So you're really learning at a young age the power of earning your own financial resources. You said that with your grandfather's mentoring, you decided to study engineering. As you're emerging from college, how's this all coming together for you as a young adult?
I kind of was toying with a couple different career paths. One of them was either going to veterinary school or medical school. Yet I studied careers. I really wanted to be able to make sure that I was going to have a job out of college. So I wanted to have a major that it could give me a pathway to maybe going on to those other things, but to also make sure I could get a job. During that time, engineering was a path where there were a lot of jobs coming available. Also, it was a little unusual to be a female engineer.
I was going to say, not too many of you at that time.
I went to college at Lehigh University, which is where my father, grandfather, and even my great-grandfather had gone there. I earned a scholarship. My parents had been saving, and then my grandfather also helped a little bit with my education. I figured out that I could do an engineering degree, leave those other things open, but then I was almost assured of having a job. Lehigh hadn't gone co-ed too much before, so the ratio there was 4 men to every woman. In engineering classes, it was like 10-1, male to female.
You couldn't get a break on the male to female dynamics.
But you know what? It was really beneficial. Being at Lehigh taught me how to have a lot of male friends. It was really good. And in fact, in terms of learning about money, my dad was a banker, but he also had that mindset of men handle the finances. I learned some basic stuff. I learned to save money. I learned how to be very frugal, but I didn't learn anything about investing or anything like that from my dad. I learned a tiny bit from my grandfather, but more I learned from the guys at school at Lehigh.
You leave Lehigh. What do you do and what's driving you at this point?
I decided I didn't want to go on for more school. I wanted to get out and I wanted to establish a career because I wanted to establish financial independence. So that was important to me. My first real job was an internship between my junior year and my senior year. The chemical engineering department at Lehigh helped me get a job. It was at a oil refinery. Now, working in an oil refinery was not my career objective.
More men, I'm sure.
However, it was a great summer job as far as earning money. That was my first taste of earning significant money because babysitting is not very much. My job was all about creating a mathematical model of a catalytic cracking unit, which was a pilot unit that was in the plant. I loved the challenge of the mathematical modeling, but my favorite part of the internship was lunch. That's when I got to talk to the other interns. So I figured out from that I liked something that was technically challenging, but I needed to do something that had more of the human interaction. I then went on to interview for full-time. I ended up at Procter Gamble because they're a very interesting company. They're actually a very purpose-driven company. It was about creating superior products that are going to improve the lives of the world's consumers. And the work I got to do was doing an interface where I could use human skills and then I could use engineering skills. It was a good match.
So it sounds like you found an alignment of everything, not only your skill set and what you wanted from a social/technical balance perspective, but also values alignment. What was happening in your money life at this period, Sue, as you're moving forward in your career, earning your own money? Were you picking up all those personal financial management skills?
There was a guy who I dated both my junior and senior year in college, and he was part of our fraternity. So I got to know a lot of his fraternity brothers, and there were two fraternity brothers in particular. One of them, his father was a gentleman farmer. So he had his own business, but he had this amazing farm. And we used to go out there from Lehigh for the weekends. So I saw this lifestyle that was completely different than what I had grown up with. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And so I learned some from that friend, from Peter and from his dad, as far as what he had done to have like a working farm, but also he was in the financial thing. And then another friend whose father was an investment banker. After I graduated, the friend whose father was an investment advisor, he said, no, you really should be thinking about investing. But the way that he talked about it was, here's a stock tip. Here's a stock you should think about investing in. Fortunately, it was Walmart.
Good tip.
So it was a decent tip. The very first stock I ever purchased was Walmart, which was a really stupid move in hindsight because I really should have invested in a mutual fund. But at least I invested in a decent stock. And then over time, talking both with friends, and then I got a lot of financial education in the context of being in a business situation. P&G, they have a very unique way of compensation. Of course, you have your salary. They had very good benefits, which was good. But the thing that was very unique is that their retirement plan that you are enrolled in right from the very beginning is in P&G preferred stock. So I had to start getting educated. Well, what does that mean? My retirement is all in company stock, and how does that affect me and all of that? And then as I got promotions, then I became eligible for bonuses and stock options and things. And you got choices of how you got your bonuses. Do you get them in cash or do you get them in options? So I had to learn about this.
We work with a lot of corporate executives. It's exciting when their compensation structures open up and there are a lot of decisions and it can get complicated pretty quickly. Were you learning on your own? Were you working with an advisor?
I did not work with a financial advisor until I got married. I learned at first predominantly from mentors at work because we had all these structures. So the people who were my mentors and sponsors at work, I would ask them about the compensation things. And my husband and I met meeting at Pearl Shampoo. After dating for a year, we got engaged and then we got married, and we were 2 weeks back from our honeymoon when we were offered international assignments. The process of planning for an international assignment made us feel like we really needed to get a little bit more educated and to get more financial help. And so that was the point at which we actually first hired a professional financial planner and wealth advisor.
That is really cool. First of all, how exciting. You've just come back, your new life together, and you both get the offer to go work internationally. That's amazing. But you now bring in an advisor. Tell us a little bit about your experience there and how it all worked out for you.
We took the advice of other friends of ours that had done international assignments. That it was in the UK. His assignment was for the UK business, and my assignment was for the Western European region for innovation work in that region. I was very lucky. I had worked on a technology platform that had launched initially in the US, was very successful, was in hair care innovation, and they wanted to expand it globally. And I had done the very first test market for it. And so I knew it, and they needed someone to come and help. We had never even been to England. So we said, hey, can we go for a look-see visit? So we did that part, looked around and understood what the whole package included and things. And then, of course, to make the decision, we actually accepted while we were there. This is just too cool of an opportunity not to do it. But we really wanted to understand from other people who had done international assignments, what are all the things you need to think about when you make this kind of a life shift? And that's when we started to seek advice. We got advice to get a professional financial planner, really understand all the benefits that the company is giving you, because you have housing allowance and you have cost of living adjustment and you had all these considerations. And the company hired us, actually, accountants, because of all the tax challenges.
Yeah, the tax part is really complicated when you're an expat.
They got that for us right away. And you actually get it for 10 years after you finish your assignment because it's so complicated. So I talked to people about what to do. And before my husband and I were married, we were both Christian, but he was Catholic and I was Protestant. We had to do the premarital thing. We did a pre-Cana weekend. And during that weekend, they put couples through all of these questions that you're supposed to do so that you can figure out if you're compatible before you get married. And two of the couples on the weekend we went to almost broke up, I think, during that weekend. Some of it had to do with financial differences.
You guys are on the same page? You were able to make it through?
We had had a lot of discussion, but that forced us to say, oh my God, look at what happened if you don't. And so we had a lot of discussions about it. My husband was probably more financially savvy than I was because his dad had been an entrepreneur, had his own business. And then his dad was very experienced in stock investments and things like that.
So glad you brought that up, because oftentimes when our clients are about to get married, we recommend not so much the religious component of that, if that's not part of their tradition, but certainly working with different folks in the family dynamic space who can help work with a couple in advance of marriage around their money identities and how they'll make decisions together. And I think the prenup process can be really helpful for that as well. Prenups kind of get a negative rap because they sort of imply that someone's trying to protect something. But the process of going through that helps a couple really think through money decisions they'll need to make together before they get married. And it can bring up a lot of topics for the couple to talk about and work through, which is easier to do before you're in that committed relationship.
I love that because it starts that process and that muscle of having the money conversation.
It's all about the money conversations.
We didn't do a prenup, but you also reminded me of a story. So my grandfather that I was so close with lived all the way through to see me start my career at P&G. He was super proud and that was wonderful. But he died within the first year that I was there. So I lost him. And then his son, my uncle, ended up taking over the company. It's a small rolling steel door company, about 500 employees. And my grandfather had worked actually into his 90s because he loved his work. And he was trying to provide for my grandmother, who was 10 years younger. So he knew she would outlive him. My uncle got promoted with another partner and were running the company. But very sadly, they were not the business people that my grandfather were. And there was also competition in the market anyhow. Eventually, the company went bankrupt. That was a very pivotal experience for me for a number of reasons. One, my uncle had actually borrowed money from my dad over time that he always promised to pay back and never did, which was hard. They did still maintain a good relationship. But then when the company went bankrupt, that also not only impacted my uncle, but also impacted my grandmother. Now he and his wife did a lot to caretake for her, and everybody worked together to make sure she was taken care of. But that made me very, very focused on financial security.
You're really bringing throughout this conversation the importance of the messages we learn early on and the experiences we have with money along our lives. They help shape and orient us to the decisions we're making in our own lives. And it sounds like you had a lot of lessons to bring into your marriage with these open conversations you and your husband were having, and then bring an advisor in, really helping you set yourself up for success.
We had a lot of conversations about what did we want for the financial future. We talked about what was important in one, the financial security first and foremost. And then we thought we eventually wanted to have a family. So we wanted to plan for that. So one of the things we said, if we had that opportunity as international managers, one of the pieces of guidance we got was sever ties with the state. So you can actually not have to pay state taxes because you're overseas. So we did all that. And then we also decided that we'd both grown up not having a lot of money. So when we put the two careers together, we said, let's see if we can live on one of our salaries. So we decided to set aside my entire salary from that point in time to invest. So that would help build the security.
Who was doing the investing?
That was through our financial advisor. But we talked about, here's what we want to accomplish. Here's why we're doing this. Now, do we have the best financial advisor at that stage? Looking back, we maybe could have picked a better one, and we changed when we came back to the States, but it wasn't like they did anything bad or wrong, but just making that decision to set aside one salary and live on one salary and whatever. In hindsight, I mean, I don't think we even knew how smart that was at the time, but it was very beneficial because we started saving and investing for retirement very early, and it paid dividends for the long run. And we also said we thought we wanted to retire at age 50. So we had to model what would it take because we wanted the financial freedom to decide.
Did you both retire? I'm putting in air quotes because I don't know what retirement is anymore.
No, we've done next chapters, gave us complete freedom and flexibility to make different decisions because I ended up leaving P&G and going into consulting. And now I do angel investing and startup advising. I joke, I'm an accidental angel investor. It's a story we haven't talked about yet.
Let's dive in because you've been talking about this somewhat conservative approach to investing and working with a financial advisor. And now you're an advocate for angel investing. Would you tell us, how did this all come about?
That was totally unexpected because I grew up with this whole mindset. I wanted to have a good job. It was about financial security, but I also wanted to make a difference in the world. So I kind of looked at it as I will go and have this job and I'll make money. And then when I have enough money, I'll give it away to charities that I care about. And it kind of evolved in a different way. It started out volunteering, but then when I was working in a global job for PG, I had like no time, but I had more money. So I started giving through the United Way first, because that was a broader way of doing it. And P&G encouraged us to be generous. They had a fair share giving. And so I felt good about that. And then as I evolved to the point where I left P&G after about 18 years, and they were doing voluntary separations. And it was at a time where my kids were young and my husband was staying in that. And I had always in the back of my mind to maybe do something independent and entrepreneurial. So I was offered a job by a boutique consulting firm. It was a chance when P&G was doing voluntary separation. So I got a year's salary and all my options. And we just did the math. And if I was going to leave any time in the next 5 to 10 years, that was the time to do it. And it would also help diversify our family. Then I had more time to do volunteer work. I started getting involved with charities, using some of my business background to help serve on some nonprofit boards. I was a founding member of an organization called Impact 100 that was trying to provide transformational grants, and then served on some other nonprofit boards. But I always thought about it as I make money and I give it away. I had no idea I'd done all this work as an entrepreneur, innovation within a large global enterprise. I thought that's where all the innovation was happening. Well, no. I was doing some strategy work at our local university, and I met this guy named Tony, and Tony was a successfully exited software entrepreneur. He sold his company for multiple millions, and as his give back, he had started an angel group. And this was about year 2000. I didn't meet him till 2015. Starting an angel group, he was his give back. And when I first heard that, I was so confused. How is starting an angel group a give back? I thought angel investing was all about the money. It was not something that had interested me at all until Tony started to me. So he actually liked what I did. He hired me to do a strategy refresh for their angel group in 2015. And that's when I learned not only is angel investing not all about the money. If all you want to do is make money, there are a lot easier ways to make money, but that it's a lot about community development. But that's also when I discovered that only 2% of venture capital went to female-founded companies. And I was shocked. I had no idea. How could anyone believe that 50% of our population has only 2% of the good ideas worth funding? Tony also thought it was crazy. He didn't understand why he couldn't attract more women into angel investing. And so when we did the strategy work, he really wanted to help grow and diversify the angel group. So he's the one who invited me to become an angel investor. And then he hooked me up with a woman named Alicia Robb. She was a senior Kaufman Fellow, PhD economist. She had written a couple books about women's access to capital and why was it so tough. And it was because there were too few women on the investor side of the table. So I went from zero involvement in angel investing to a huge learning curve. I joined Tony's Queen City Angels, helped them with creating a starter tier in angel investing. And I joined Alicia Rob's pilot fund. And then her fund was Next Wave Impact, which was to put to rest the myth that you can't have a purpose-driven high growth company that creates positive change and creates returns.
It sounds like you cut the bug of this angel investing and you're looking to transform the world with your dollars, encouraging other people to do the same.
I was not confident about doing it initially. I met Alicia and she was doing this fund, training more women. And Tony was like, if you join our group, you'll learn a lot because you'll be investing alongside of all these people. And then when Alicia started her Next Wave Impact Fund, she asked me to be on the investment committee. I burst out laughing. I'm like, I've been doing this for less than a year. How could you possibly want me on your investment committee? And she's like, because you have an innovation background and I have plenty of people who already have finance background and you live in the Midwest. So you're going to see deals that don't come from the coast. I don't believe all the best innovations come from the coast either. I'm like, okay, I agree.
Tell us, what's your next money conversation going to be and who's it going to be with?
I continue to like to partner on helping other people understand the power of their money to drive change. It's going to be about how do we get more people talking about money? Because we think one of the problems with it is that not enough people talk about money in a positive way and money as a lever to drive change. They understand some pathways like giving money away, but they don't understand how much power investing has to drive change.
Sue, we love this. We agree. It's so important. Sue, where's the best place for listeners to find you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn.
Sue, thank you so much for joining and sharing your stories, getting vulnerable, and just really impacting and changing the world through the work you're doing and through these money conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening, and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspirient. Go to aspirient.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspirient.com. See you next time.